Probably people are not gonna like this, but I have to do it. And yeah, you don't really need the vertical jump once you get sky scale. So we'll get to that. Probably one of the worst mounts in my opinion. I don't think any other mount actually has that other effect. You can simply negate that fall damage with the Jackal because you can just blink. Once you get into the game and once you try it out the first time, you immediately realize that it's actually not a flying mount. That mount alone is actually pretty good. It doesn't have too many things on it, like it's not packed with stuff, but those things that it has are very unique and very good to have. In PV, you're rarely gonna use it because you have better options for moving around. You're probably never gonna use Springer once you unlock Skyscale, so that is pretty awesome. You probably never gonna use the glider. Definitely I accept that it's really cool. If you're here, you wanna know which mount in Guild Wars 2 is the best. For today, I decided to make a tier list of all the mounts in Guild Wars 2. Currently, we have 9 mounts, 5 of which were released with the expansion Path of Fire, and the rest of them, the other 4 mounts, were released with different expansions and DLCs. What is the main criteria that I'm using for this tier list? It's not about speed particularly, it's about versatility. Or in other words, in how many different situations you can use the different mounts and how useful they are. Some people may not agree with this. This is just my personal opinion. I'm gonna explain to you why I put each mount in the different tier, and probably gonna see some of your favorite mounts not at the spot you expected, but I'll try to be as clear as possible so you understand why I put them there. I have put them in order from release, with obviously the first 5 were released at once, but you have order of acquisition. So the first one you acquire through the story is the Raptor, the next one is Springer, then we have Skimmer, after that we have Jacko, then we have Griffon, the next one is Roller Beetle, then we have Warclaw, Skyscale, and Siege Turtle. That's the latest, that's the most recent mount, although it was released, I think, a couple of years ago. So yeah, maybe at some near future they may release another mount as well, but anyway. We have the standard 5 tiers going from D all the way to S. So D is the worst and S is the best. Let's get into it. The first mount, Raptor. I know a lot of people are actually using Raptor as a main like default kind of mount that you use all the time when you're trying to get from point A to point B without having to travel a long distance, because otherwise you'd probably use Roller Beetle. But as general, a lot of people I've seen use Raptor. And so basically you have leap distance. That's great, but once you jump, you don't have too much control of it. And you have a couple of other mounts that actually give you a bit more control with similar speed. So other than just being regular faster movement, there isn't really something special about it. It's the first mount, obviously, so it's pretty much the easiest one to acquire. But on top of that, it doesn't even have any special skill other than, you know, the engage skill that you attack with. But basically every mount has that, so there's not really something super special about it. Personally, I don't think that this is so good. Probably people are not gonna like this, but I have to do it. I have to put Raptor all the way to C. Just bear with me. You understand why I put it all the way down here. The next one, we have the Springer. So what does the Springer do? Well, it's a vertical jump. You have somewhat slow speed because you're not really moving forward. It's just to jump higher. And technically, both of these, like the Raptor and the Springer, are negated later as you get better mounts. Kind of like the best of both of them in one mount. Other than the vertical jump, you don't have anything super special with this Springer. And yeah, you don't really need the vertical jump once you get Skyscale. So we'll get to that. Also, it doesn't have any special skill as well. Like, you don't use it to unlock something specifically, which, you know, some of the other mounts actually have something special about them. And you're not immune to fall damage, but you have reduced fall damage. So it's really not very special. And I have to put it all the way to D, like the last category. So that's probably one of the worst mounts in my opinion. Of course, this was not the case at the time of the release because we only had these 5 mounts. So obviously this was pretty decent and you had to use it in many different situations. But since we already have other mounts, that's probably not going to see many people using that these days. So let's get to the next one. That's the Skimmer. Okay, so the Skimmer is, in my opinion, I'm going to say straight away, it's much better than the previous ones. First, it's the only one that can actually travel over water and underwater as well. And also, you can still use it on land, but of course it's going to be slower, so you're not really going to use it on land. You're going to use it on water, and it's faster over water. What does that mean? Because like I said, you can't use any other mounts over water except if the water is shallow, then this is still considered at the same time water, but also land. In this case, the skimmer is still going to be faster, even though you can travel over that shallow water with a land mount, you can still get the speed boost for the skimmer. So that's a small thingy about the skimmer. On top of that, you can even use it to go underwater. So that's basically the only mount that you can use underwater. You can actually travel freely. You don't really have anything else other than that. It has a couple of other interesting things about it. It is immune to both fall damage. So if you're dropping from somewhere very high, you're not going to take any fall damage when you're on the skimmer. But on top of that, that's actually very rare. Not many, I don't think any other mount actually has that other effect. You're also immune to a lot of environmental AoE effects. That could be a slow effect or damage that is on the ground from environmental stuff. It's not from an enemy. It's like a field or something, including the sand, by the way. You can go over the sand with the skimmer. The sand is not only just going to slow you down if you don't have the skimmer, it's also doing damage over time. With the skimmer, you can just skip that altogether. Of course, once you have a sky scale, you can just obviously just fly over it, but generally speaking, at the time this was pretty decent. So I have to put skimmer above Raptor and Springer, obviously. So I'd say skimmer is probably B, in my opinion. That is a pretty good spot for it, because in the end of the day, you're mostly going to use it only for water areas, but then you have all these additional interesting skills and features that come with the mount, so that makes it somewhat special in my opinion. Now the next one, you might be a little bit surprised, but Jacko, I would say I'm going to put it high. Let's just go through it with all the skills. This is also one of the basic mounts, by the way, but why I'm going to put Jacko high in the rank list. So first of all, you have triple blink. Now, this can be basically substitute for the travel distance of Raptor. Raptor has 2 dashes forward or jumps, and the distance you're going to travel with the Raptor and the Jacko is probably the same, since the Jacko has 3 blinks, but they're shorter. However, the blink means that you're actually, for a period of time, you're basically teleporting, which means that you can change direction mid-flight. You can jump forward and then just move your camera really fast, and you can jump backward or in any direction you want, which obviously you cannot really do that kind of control with the Raptor. So that's the first big like advantage of the blinks. Also, you're evading attacks while blinking, basically. Also, another feature of the blink. So this is the basic movement skill of the Jacko has so many different aspects of it. It's not just a movement. You can actually go through some barriers, in open world barriers, not to everything, not to any kind of wall, but you can move through some objects, which is specifically designed. And this is pretty cool, in my opinion. The next thing that the Jacko has is the special ability. Like when I say special ability, is something that only that specific mount has. So some of the mounts have those, but like I said, Raptor and Springer specifically don't have anything special about them. It's just movement, and you can, if you can get to this area with any other mounts, then that's it. It's not specifically required for something. So the Jacko has a special ability. It's the only mount that can use sand portals, which were introduced with Path of Fire, and you have to use them in some areas specifically to move forward, especially like in some of the stories, and also I think there's one raid you can use. And then from that point onwards, they were adding the sand portals from time to time to different areas, but generally speaking, only the Jacko can use them. So that's a pretty good feature. Another thing about the blink, by the way, is that if you blink mid-air, you negate fall damage. So technically the Jacko takes fall damage, so you can even, now, when you would take all the damage from falling, if you have a mount, you're not dying, but you're gonna dismount and you'll be kind of like stunned for a moment. However, you can simply negate that fall damage with the Jacko because you can just blink mid-air, and it's like you didn't fall all that huge distance, right, from that height, which is pretty cool as well. So you can basically use it in so many different situations. In my opinion, the Jacko gives you so much more freedom when it comes to mobility compared to Raptor, even though the speed is somewhat the same. Like it's not much faster, but you have more versatility. And on top of that, you have the special skill. So I have to put Jacko all the way to A. It's not the highest one, it's not the S tier, but it's A definitely. I could consider even put it in S, but I think A is pretty decent spot for the Jacko. Moving forward, we have the Griffon. Okay, what is the Griffon actually? First, when you look at it, you're thinking, oh, that's gonna be a flying mount. Let's be real. Once you get into the game and once you try it out the first time, you immediately realize that it's actually not a flying mount. It's more of a something like a high jump with with the gliding, basically. It's like integrated gliding into the mount. So with the glide, it also means automatically that it's immune to fall damage, which is great. But, you know, generally speaking, that's supposed to be a flying mount, so that makes sense. Also, it is technically the fastest air mount that you have. However, it really depends on the height. You have to be very high in the sky, as high as possible, and then drop down. And this is how you accelerate and you get to the fastest speed, which is making it not very versatile because you can only use that in a couple of scenarios. Outside of the challenges that you can use specifically, you need to use Griffon to complete them. But other than that, you're not going to see many good situations where you can use the Griffon. And on top of everything, it doesn't have any special skill. Technically, you don't use it for something specific to open some door or something or whatever. So really, basically, it's kind of a glorified gliding ability in a way. So I cannot really give it a high score based on all that. So I'm gonna have to drop it on C, right next to the Raptor. I don't see huge value from the Griffin itself. As soon as you get the Sky Scale, you're gonna replace it in. Very unlikely to use the Griffin, except you really just like it and you just enjoy the way you just drop down and accelerate a lot. But you're really not gonna use that too often, realistically. Now we're moving to the other mounts that were released throughout the expansions. The next one is Roller Beetle. Okay, that's a very interesting mount. You have some dependency to accelerate. If you're dropping down on a slope, you're gonna accelerate at some point to the high speed without doing anything, which is great. But even if you don't have a slope, you can use the special ability, which is kind of like the dodge ability of the mount, and accelerate on a even ground, on a flat ground, which is great. So you don't really have that much dependency. You can just go almost immediately to very high speed. And this is the fastest ground mount, so that is pretty awesome. If you have a longer distance, obviously you're going to use that. Not going to use any of the other mounts on the ground. Now, on top of that, you can technically skip small bodies of water. If you have accelerated enough, you can bounce off of water a couple of times. Not too much, but still, if it's a small body of water, you can go through it. If it's a river, for instance, or a small lake, you can definitely just jump over it as well. If you're from some special ramp or something, but even without a ramp, you just basically skip it. And on top of all that, it has actually a special skill, which is breaking specific walls. So those walls were released with the mount, and you can only break them using the mount. They were marked with the symbol of the mount of the Roller Beetle, and that's the only way you can break through these walls. And there's some sort of a chest, some sort of reward inside, which is kind of a bonus. So that mount alone is actually pretty good. It doesn't have too many things on it, like it's not packed with stuff, but those things that it has are very unique and very good to have. So I'm gonna have to put it somewhat high in the rank list. So I'd probably say it's good enough to be A in my opinion, even though it's probably less versatile than Jacko, but I feel like you're gonna use it more often than Skimmer in my opinion. Really depends, but generally speaking, the water part of the game is not as much as the land part. So yeah. So the next one is Warclaw. That's a very special mount. First of all, it's the only mount that you can use in World versus World, so you cannot use any other mount there. That's only Warclaw. And you can still use it in PvE areas as well. It has some small differences between the two versions, but generally speaking, it's mostly specifically designed for World versus World. So you have very unique skills that you can use there for that mode. The speed is average, not super fast, not super slow. You're still dashing forward when you use it, which is great. And also in PvE, you have a spec that basically makes him immune to fall damage, as far as I've read about this. So that's really awesome ability as well. But once again, in PvE, you're rarely gonna use it because you have better options for moving around. And in World vs. World is the only mount to use. So I'd say this the Warclaw is probably B in my opinion. It's kind of like in the middle. Then we move to the Sky Scale. Okay, that's a special one. It's gonna take some time just to walk you through all the crazy things that the Sky Scale can do. First of all, that is actually a flying mount. You can stay indefinitely in the air. So you don't have to, you're not gliding downwards. As long as you got the initial energy, you're gonna jump up and you're gonna stay in the air. Now you cannot really go super high because you have limitations related to the energy bar. The speed is somewhat average. It has air dash basically. So it's not super fast, but it's kind of like negating the use of both Raptor and Springer at the same time because it has somewhat similar speed with the dash, and technically you can just go vertical with it, so that's why you're probably never going to use Springer once you unlock Skyscale. So that is pretty awesome. Obviously, it's immune to fall damage, so it goes without saying. And some of the mounts have shared abilities that once you lock it on this mount, you kind of give this ability to every other mount. I didn't really mention those abilities about the other mounts because they didn't seem to be that important. However, Skyscale has really awesome skill that, of course, you mostly just use it for flying mount. That would be, I think the Griffin can also benefit from that. But generally speaking, it's really awesome. You have a mastery that unlocks the ability to use leyline updrafts, both the vertical and horizontal ones. So now, without the glider, you can technically use the updrafts. Back in the days, you had to use the glider, which is a mastery from Heart of Thorns, the previous expansion. But now, once you get Skyscale, technically you can go around even without the glider. Like, you probably never going to use the glider. Another thing that the Skyscale can do is the ability to collect volatile magic and latent magic, which are basically like small, kind of like anomaly looking things. Both of them refill your energy bar, allowing you to fly for a limited time going upwards. As long as you have these magic things in the air, you can just go around, pick them up, and just go higher and higher. Obviously, that is only in certain areas, but without this mount, it's nearly impossible to go through these areas. So that is, in a way, kind of a special ability, because really, without this, there's almost no way. Especially, I think in Secrets of the Obscure, there are a couple of maps where it's technically impossible unless you either teleport to someone or you obviously already have the waypoint. But if you're actually moving forward, you want to discover the map, this is pretty much the only way that I found. Another thing that it has, can use a damage ability, which is the fireballs, from a distance while still mounted, so no need to engage. Also, the fireballs can do damage to objects, which in PvE that would be some gates, I think in Drizzlewood Coast. So with all that being said, you see how many things the Skyscale can do, and it's kind of like negating the need of use for a couple of other mounts all at once. So I have to put Skyscale as, in my opinion, the best mount in the game. So it's going to be S tier. And then the last one is Siege Turtle. Now, Siege Turtle also has a lot of cool features, but I'd say they're very specific, and you're mostly going to benefit in specific situations with those things. You're not really going to see a lot of people using it by default very often. That's another mount that can be used underwater, but unlike the Skimmer, it's a little bit limited. You can technically just walk underwater. So I don't know, that doesn't seem to be super awesome. I mean, it's there, you can use it, but I really don't see that many uses for that. But anyway, you have it there. Also, it's technically the highest HP mount. It has the highest max HP. And I think this is also shared mastery with the other mounts, so you just increase the maximum HP of other mounts. Also, basically the dash ability is kind of a glide. It's like temporal glide, so you can probably use that to negate fall damage as well if you do it like mid-air. So that's there. It has a special ability that's really interesting, but you don't have really that kind of a crazy application for that special ability. It's just really cool to have it, and again, it's very unique. You can carry 2 players basically. That's going to be you. If you're the main player, you use the mount, and then you can have another person to get on the mount as well. So you're going to be 2 people. And both of you can use damage abilities. Of course, the main character would disengage. However, the second player can use a damage ability without dismounting. It's really cool, the concept of it, but again, it doesn't have that many applications. Like, you're not going to see that being used so often. It does siege damage to environmental objects. Once again, that's like gates and stuff like that, which will be used in a couple of areas like meta events, but not much outside of that. And also, it can break certain walls, okay? So that's like kind of similar to the roller beetle. However, it's generally a slow speed mount. You don't really have high speed. Like I said, the dash ability, the evade ability, is basically just kind of like gliding you, making you go a bit higher. But other than that, it's just not that many different situations where you're going to use it. Although it's really cool. Definitely, I accept that it's really cool. And for that reason, for all these unique abilities that the Siege Turtle has, I would put it in A. That's going to be A tier. So it's one of the top mounts in my opinion as well. That's pretty much it. Personally, my favorites are Skyscale and Jacko in this case. I just use them interchangeably all the time, depending on what I need to do. But yeah, I feel like this is the order of how good the different mounts are, in my opinion. I hope nobody is disappointed if they see their favorite mount a bit lower on the rank list. Don't mean to offend anybody, but with all that being said, thank you for watching, have a nice day, and till next time.